So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay?
Well, listen here.
Hello, and welcome to 90 Day Fiancé MK. I'm Mr. O, and today, Miss H and I will be discussing Season 11, Episode 2 of 90 Day Fiancé. In this episode, we meet Greg, who lives with his mom and has no real job, but has to make ends meet for his fiancée Joan. Sarper tells his family about his plans to move to the U.S. Mahdi takes notice of something new about the American flag to him. Mina gets a very bad impression of New Hampshire, and Juan learns just how little privacy he's going to have now. Okay, thanks for listening, stay safe, and enjoy.
Hello, Mr. O.
Hello, Miss H.
How are you today?
I'm doing better. This is our second time trying to record because technical difficulties. I somehow was recording your voice instead of mine.
Yeah.
And then there was keyboard mapping issues. We were just have all this stuff going on. We were trying to get started.
A lot of, complaining going on over on this end.
Yeah.
So, speaking of maybe negative energies, let's actually get started. This time, I'm going to start with a different couple, just because I kind of want to get them out of the way, because, talking about negative energies, Shekinah and Sarper. So, in Turkey, Sarper is playing a trick on Shekinah and tells her that he was rejected for his visa because America doesn't want him because he's just too handsome and it just wouldn't be fair to other American men. It ends up that he is approved, and Sarper says that his K1 approval is just as good as he says, an orgasm and peeing, because apparently all three of those.
He ranked peeing number 1, which is interesting.
Okay, it's like, do you hold it until you can't possibly go anymore? Okay.
I mean, that's the only time it really feels good is if you really have to go. Yeah.
He seems like the type that would do that, right? He'd be like, oh, I know this could feel good. Yeah. What a weirdo. Anyways, he claims that he told the embassy that he is a professional narcissist, which I totally believe him. Shekinah is so happy that she's crying. Shekinah had warned him not to be an asshole and to actually act cute, and he just said, yes, sir, and was polite. Sarper is a little worried about telling his family because he's supposed to take care of his family since he's the only child. Shekinah assures him that they will visit often and see his family. Sarper is worried if they tell him not to go to the U.S. because he doesn't know what he'll do in that situation. So they're on their way to see his parents, and Sarper is dressed up like a cowboy stripper. I don't really get his outfit.
It was interesting.
Yeah, as they're on their way to meet Sarper's family to break the news to them. Sarper is worried about his parents' health because he can't come back and visit while he's waiting for his green card. Shekinah tells him that he can't look sad and worried when they break the news. They practice his smile and voice, which Shekinah is very critical about. Sarper's dad and mom and cousin warmly greet them as they arrive. Shekinah had bought them all gifts from Ankara. Sarper starts to tell them about the interview, and his cousin basically assumed that that's why they were there, but also was a little surprised that he didn't tell them anything. They all seem in shock about the interview. But Sarper tries to tell them that it's like, no big deal. He's just going on a 3-month vacation. And he won't be giving up his apartment or selling his car, which he said in passing, but that's kind of news to us. His parents ask about their visas for the wedding, and Sarper tells them that they can't be there, and it just kills him that they can't be there to witness his wedding. Sarper tells him that him and Shekinah would have broken up if he didn't get this interview or his visa because they didn't want to do long distance anymore. His dad observes that Sarper seems to have mixed feelings about all this. His mom says that she is sad and she will cry when he leaves, but his parents both agree that he has the right to move on, but they are worried about their own health. Sarper explains to them the green card process and tells them that it will maybe be more than 3 months before he can go back and forth. Sarper's cousin tells Shekinah that they all just need time to process the news. All right, so, we've heard from Sarper before saying that he didn't want to leave. And that's why this couple ended up on the other way to begin with. Right? And we didn't necessarily expect them to be on 90 Day Fiancé ever. And here we have Sarper, claiming, before they actually went, that he didn't want to leave. But now he seems kind of excited about it. But then he tells his parents, oh, I'm going to keep my apartment and I'm not going to sell my car. So it sounds like he's just not all in.
I mean, I think,
thoughts?
I think it sounds like he wants his parents to think he's not all in, right? Like, I think that, and not be like, oh yeah, I might just break up with this chick at any time. Has been like, no, this is not a permanent situation. I'm not going to sell my apartment or anything, right? This isn't like I'm going to leave and never come back, which, yeah, I mean, that's something, but it's also like he's 45 or something like that. It's not like he's, a young kid leaving when he's 18 being like, I'll never come back. Or like other people, like we see Maddie here and this later in this episode that are like, oh no, he legit might be there forever.
Right.
And right. But this just kind of seemed like his way of being like, no, I'm not abandoning you and I'm not abandoning Turkey. I don't know how much of that was for his own benefit or how much he was saying for his parents' benefit to try to like ease them into what the situation is.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know what Shekinah's living situation is too, because like I said, the last time we saw them, they were on the other way.
Right.
So,
right. That's not usually the other way to OG is not usually the pathway we see people. Usually people on the other way stay the other way.
Right. And so it's like, did you have a backup plan before you left? Did you have a place all ready to go? So when you decided like, oh, I'm not going to actually live in Turkey, the season is over, I'm going to move back to the US. Like, did she keep a place as well? Because it kind of sounds like they're both, not really planning on permanently moving to the other country.
Right. I mean, it kind of seems like their ideal situation is for at least the meantime while her daughter's in boarding school or whatever, is like when the daughter's away, we'll be in Turkey. And when she needs to come home, we'll be in the States. Like, we'd like to be able to bounce back and forth between the two.
Right.
Between the two would be their like ideal situation. But that's another thing that's just like, that's also a temporary situation. Like, her daughter's already a teenager. Yeah. Right. It's not, she's not that much longer that it's going to be like, well, she's away at school and then she comes back and then she's away at school and then she comes back. Right. That's going to last less than 10 years. Mm-hmm. Right. And that less than 10 years is a medium term plan. That's not a long term plan. Right. So I'm curious to kind of see what both of them think the long term plan is, because I could also see that. Right. If I'm Sarper and I'm like, well, after 7 years or whatever, we're coming back to Turkey permanently. Yeah. Then if you can rent your apartment out, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
Yeah. It's all just, I was also just distracted by the sleeveless flannel shirt that he was wearing.
Yeah.
And
she was also dressed very interestingly, but I didn't know how to like succinctly describe it. She just didn't match. She was wearing that head bandana that was like an animal
like a camo
print.
Was it animal print or was it camo?
I couldn't really tell.
It was a non-natural camo. There was a print on it and then like a pink cami was what she was doing. Yes.
Also, they just didn't match. Like, she was not matching, which I'm kind of surprised because she kind of very much, both of them very much pride themselves on like their outer appearance. And so for Shekinah to kind of even seem like the clothes she was wearing didn't match just seemed odd. And I'm not saying that Sarper like looked, but he definitely had a look to him. It matched at least.
Yeah. But I mean, it was, I couldn't get over that one. And then there was the other one he was wearing in the interviews where he had like an orange button down on or some sort, right? But it was like, it clearly wasn't designed to be unbuttoned as far as he had unbuttoned. Oh my gosh. Like, it was down to his belly buttons.
Yeah.
Belly button. I'm like, dude, that is a 2 unbuttoned shirt at the most. Cause it sat weird because it's not meant to be unbuttoned that far. Right? It wasn't designed that way.
He's going to wear all his clothes like that.
Yeah, then buy clothes that are like, they sell plenty of clothes for people like him that are supposed to be unbuttoned down to the chest, but like it was just sitting weird. And I'm like, dude, that's just like the shirt you wear under a suit, and you just unbuttoned it for 12 buttons down. Who also does that is Josh
from Last Resort, and it drives me nuts because I hate that dude. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, would you freaking just button up your shirt, Josh? Nobody wants to see that.
Right. Well, at least Sarper like truly believes that people want to see that. So, and like he spent a lot of time and energy and money getting that down. I'm going to have it out there for the world.
He's got an interesting look to me because I'm not personally attracted to him or his look, but he definitely looks like someone decided to like type in things into AI and it is like a AI generated image of an attractive man, you know? And so it's like,
but I feel like that was like, I want an attractive man with angles. Give me angles.
So it's like, he's just got an interesting look and like, I don't know, I guess he's attractive, but like, I'm not into it.
To me, it's one of those things that it's like, yes, technically, if you look at all the pieces,
right,
those are all attractive things, but somehow all together, it's just not doing it for me.
Right. Whereas Josh, I'm just like, ugh.
Oh, no, he's just like, please.
But he
stop.
thinks he's pretty attractive.
Oh, yeah, he does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way he presents himself on social media, I'm like, please stop.
Doesn't he do like the Bad Boys videos and stuff? Oh,
but
God,
arguably, like Jamal and Rob, who he does.
Oh, yes.
Both of those are good-looking guys. Josh, no, get out of here. One of these are not like the other.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about let's talk about the person we were talking about. We started talking about them offline, so let's go with that. Let's talk about Steve and Mahdi. So Stevie is getting all packed, complete with a change of shirt just in case she throws up all over herself when she drives over a bridge.
This is so bizarre.
Which is apparently a common occurrence for her. So she tells us some more of her weird quirks that Maddie's going to have to get used to. She doesn't like to wear pants. She naps all the time. She has night terrors. She falls asleep while she's eating.
Oh my gosh.
So he has been warned, and the night terror thing he did experience once when they were in Turkey together, and she was like, this guy's going to leave me. So she has to pick him up in the New Orleans airport, which like geographically means she's got to take the I-10 bridge like that goes over Lake Pontchartrain. And so she does, and it's like it's like a floating bridge, right? It's not like a big, long, tall bridge. It's like a floating bridge. And so she's on that. We see her on there, visibly disturbed, just powering through, getting over this bridge. So she talks about how she's worried that he's not going to be able to go back to Iran after he gets here. And that means he has to leave his friends and family behind. And that puts a lot of pressure on her and on them to make this thing work, right? It's like the 90 days to decide. It's like, no, there's no undoing. If he has to leave, he has nowhere to go.
Right.
So she makes it to the airport and almost forgets her sign, which will be explained why later. It says like Madim instead of Mahdi. And I was like, that's not his name, but it gets explained. Then they come to start. She waits at the escalator, but she's staring at the wrong escalator and he like comes down behind her. So he comes down, they have the hug, the triumphant music. And since he's here now, we get an in-person interview with him. He says he's, Mahdi, and he says he prefers to tell people he's Persian because that sounds friendlier than saying he's Iranian, which is something I've experienced from people from that part of the world. They will almost always tell me they're Persian. But his English is pretty good.
So good. I was impressed.
So I was like, so Stevie must be a pretty good teacher.
Yeah.
That's how they met.
That was my conclusion, yeah.
So he explains the whole Mahdi, the M thing at the end of his name. And he says that's because in Farsi, that putting an M on the end of something is like how you demonstrate that it belongs to you. So it's like saying my Mahdi is by doing that. So he talks about how complex his emotions are. Very straightforwardly, very like, my emotions are very complex right now. Like he says exactly what he thinks. He has a very calm, straightforward way of speaking, flat way of speaking. And it really seems like it didn't really hit him what was going on or what the implications were of his moving until his family like said goodbye to him at the airport and they were all crying. And he was like, oh, yeah, this is a big deal. So this is also when we get our first countdown timer of the season. We get the 90 days to wed. So we leave the airport and they have to go back over. It can't be the same bridge because they stayed in New Orleans, but there's another bridge that she freaks out about. And he's like, this is not even a big bridge. Like, what is that? So we see that. So it's his first experience of America is you really jump in the deep end if New Orleans is your first, like, right? Let's see America. Like, so it's a bit of a culture shock. He's like, there's bars that have like co-ed. There's people drinking together. Like the women are just walking around the street in short shorts. There's Hooters, both the restaurant and literal boobs, like in storefronts that I can see. So they're spending the night in a hotel in New Orleans, and they're both looking forward to getting some alone time. So they go to the place. It's one of those trendy, exposed brick, lots of industrial looking things. And they're kind of sitting there like right outside where the bright sign is for the hotel. I don't know how you could possibly sleep in that room.
Yeah.
But they're sitting there kind of enjoying. He's like just taking in the room, taking in the sights. He kind of looks outside. There's an American flag. And he's like, well, you know what? That's the first time I've seen an American flag that isn't on fire. Or the torn one that he saw when he toured the U.S. Embassy, where the hostages and stuff were. Yeah, that one. So his family is really having a tough time with him leaving. And again, seeing his family cry really made this whole thing seem much more real to him. So he knows it's like a risk that if he doesn't make it here and he does go back, he'll just be arrested for trying to defect. So he asked Stevie how she would feel about if one day he decided he needed to go back to Iran. So she obviously is supportive as she wants to be, but is kind of hurt by that. She's like, it's literally your first day here and you're already talking about leaving. But she's trying to show some empathy, and that's where we leave them. So, what are your kind of first impressions of Maddie here when we see him in person?
So we were talking about this offline. Like, he's just really serious and really intense. And
yeah, it's a different vibe for this show, for sure.
Definitely a different vibe for this show because, he doesn't seem like someone you can kind of be playful with or joke around with. And some of his conversations, went a little on the dark side because he's just so intense. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see, is he always this serious, or maybe, he was just getting here and he's kind of feeling like the weight of his decisions, and maybe that's why he was so serious. But yeah, I'm kind of impressed by him as a person, and there is a part of me that likes the fact that he seems to be taking this seriously, because this isn't a joke to him. He's not coming here to, 90 days isn't enough to decide. Like, in his mind, he has made a decision because,
what else? That's one of the things different. He's not one of those, fuck around guys that are like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to settle down. Like, he's already like, yeah, I can't go back.
Right.
I could be in jail. Like, that's it. The die is cast. I am on this. The only way through this is forward. And
right.
And so, but yeah, it's not a lot of the, because we've seen so many of those guys. Like, the one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is like Sinjin. Remember Tanya and Sinjin?
I thought of that too.
Just being like, well, gosh, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I just want to drink all day. And it's like, no, like you're
right. Yeah, but you do have partners that come over and are just like, well, I don't know. I still need to decide if I want to get married, which is so weird to me because it's like, hasn't that already been decided through the engagement process?
Yes. And that's what's weird. I mean, I don't know if it's because production pushes that or whatever, but are there really people who propose and then, give the engagement ring and then are like, I guess there are, because like, the people who, because there's plenty of people, and you and I have both known plenty of them, that get engaged and propose. And you're like, great, that's done. Dusted that off. And it's like, when are you starting to plan the wedding? They're like, whoa. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. It's like,
we're just moving too fast. It's like, okay. But shouldn't that have already been decided?
Yeah, it seems like once you've proposed, it's like, now is the time now we're actually planning the wedding. Yes. And it's like, whoa, that's a little bit down the road. And it's like, and that they seem that in 90 days just isn't enough time to decide, seem like neighbors to me. Like
they are. Yeah. Well, I think there was some kind of interesting statistic. Like, if you don't have a date set within the first year of an engagement, like the statistical likelihood of you actually following through with a marriage is pretty unlikely. I think there's some stats on that.
Seems that I'd be interested to see what the actual numbers are, but that totally scans to me. I don't know anybody who either I mean I've known both. I've known people who've been quote unquote engaged for like decades.
Oh,
right?
Gosh.
And there's like, these people are never getting married. They're functionally married, right? They just never actually got married. And then people who, after they're engaged for like 3 years and then they break up.
Right. But, and that's not to say you can't have a long engagement, because I think kind of the loophole of that, study was like, you didn't set a date, right? And so setting a date, like if you decide, we're going to get married 2 years from now, and we set a date and we have a venue, I think that's different than the person who's like, 2 years have passed and they've made zero plans or any progress towards solidifying any kind of date.
Right. Yeah. Because sometimes you get those venues that like take 10 years to.
Yeah. Right.
And you're like, I don't know. I booked it before I got engaged. And now I just booked it because I might be engaged in 10 years when it's time to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to another couple that is maybe well, actually, both of mine kind of have some chaos going on, but the actual immediate chaos is Juan and Jessica. So Jessica and Juan and the children are all checking into a hotel, and Juan is wondering why they all have to share a room. But Jessica tells us that her 2 boys, not their baby, because they have a baby, are too young to stay in a room by themselves. Juan is super tired, and the boys are just full of energy. Juan isn't used to being around kids or seeing all of this chaos, but he says he isn't feeling overwhelmed quite yet. Juan tells us that he had a great life up until he was 8 when his dad died. His brother and his mom had to go to work, and Juan was left to figure out everything by himself, so it makes him want to be a good father and stepfather. He's never been around kids, but he feels pretty good about it. In the morning, all the kids are in the same bed as Juan, as Jessica is trying to get everyone ready to check out of the hotel. Juan thought that they would have a little bit more privacy with Jessica, but he describes it as a fatherhood night and hopes that the second night is better. The kids are screaming, which then makes the baby cry, and they just ignore the baby, hoping the driving will calm him down. Eventually, the baby stops crying. Juan asks if the birds he sees are penguins, and Jessica just laughs. After about 30 minutes, they start seeing nothing. Jessica suggests that they play I Spy, but Juan says all they see is flat land with yellow grass and some cows. The boys are bored, so they stop playing that game. The first thing that Juan noticed when they got to Torrington is that, and this is no surprise given Jessica's introduction, it smells like cow poop. Jessica is pointing out all the hot spots like the liquor store and the movie theater. As soon as they pull into the house driveway, the baby starts crying again. Juan is admiring the poster that's in front of the house, and it makes him feel special. One thing that Juan noticed about the house is that Jessica, she likes to have a lot of positive affirmations, and there are just too many messages in this house. He just thinks it's a lot. Juan is surprised that their room doesn't have doors and wonders if it's an American thing to not have doors. No, Juan, it's not.
No, it is not.
No. Juan says that it doesn't look the same as it did on FaceTime. Jessica had warned him that there was very little privacy, but Juan says there is no privacy. He has to walk through the boys' room to get to his closet and to use their shower. Juan says it's like they're all kind of sleeping in the same room, and Jessica tells him that's part of being a parent. The boys are just talking to Jessica, like, even though they've all gone to bed, like, they're all in the same room.
Yeah.
This is a wild setup.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're Juan and this is your situation, are you like, what the hell? I can't do this.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm never having sex again.
Yeah.
This is never happening.
Unless the boys are at school.
Yeah, but then isn't she going to be at work?
Yeah, well, who knows? I don't even remember what she does for work. Because all we've really seen her is like scooping up things like farmhand work, right? That's the only thing we've seen her do.
Yeah, but I don't think she does that. I think she does like counseling and like mediation or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm like so many things that are wrong with that. But yes, I mean, my first thought is the baby's in bed with us. The boys are within earshot. We are never having sex.
Yeah.
And like, that was something and because he, at least with the hotel, you were like, I get it. It's a hotel. They couldn't be by themselves. But tonight we'll get down. And and it's like, nope, no, you will not. Like, this is not going to happen.
Kind of makes me wonder a little bit, like, what kind of other support, because she's divorced. So, I mean, at least the two boys won't be there all the time, assuming that
there's
they
like
have,
at least every other weekend or something.
Right, overnights or something with dad. I would assume they have to have some overnights with dad. But it's also like, why didn't you make arrangements with dad to have the kids stay there, on this night or something, so you could have some more privacy? Does she have family members that could have taken the baby for a night? It just seems like a lot to have to kind of throw him in this situation where, to me, it's like the only incentive for him to stay is to do right by you and his family and be there to take care of the baby. But it just doesn't seem like, he's going to have a partnership the way that he probably imagined, like a sexless partnership, right?
Right. Yeah.
Any kind of intimacy.
Yeah. She keeps bothering me in that the way she kind of insists that her kids and her way of doing things and how she has arranged her life is just what being a parent is, right? And like she seems to believe, oh, you're a parent, you never get privacy. And it's like, no, you don't get privacy because that's the way you chose to parent. Right. That's the way you chose to make your life around being a parent.
Why don't they have doors? They clearly have a door frame. How hard is it to buy some doors and get some on there?
And the bedrooms are in the basement of the house.
Yeah, that also made me wonder what their house situation
what
was.
Is their house? Yeah, what is their house situation? And they're all sleeping in the basement with no window. And then, again, and you at some point chose to be in a windowless room. Like you chose to do that. Not to say I definitely don't try to pass judgment. My kids were never that wild and rambunctious. But that's just, and I'm like, but I would never say, oh, that's because I parented a certain way. Sometimes you just get kids that are quiet. Sometimes you just get kids that are full bundles of energy, right? It just, that is what it is. But I don't know. It's just that a lot of the specific way my kids and my life is organized. That's just what being a parent is. And it doesn't have to be, right? There didn't have to be all the kids in that house with them that first night they got home. Like you said, there was almost certainly ways to get a night of privacy. Right. Right. And she's not either doesn't have the imagination to see that or doesn't want to do that and isn't recognizing that that's a choice that she made and not a thing that they are inevitably stuck with.
Because I could also see her being like, well, the boys are excited that their stepdad is here, I could see her not even trying to get a babysitter or switch weekends with their father because she's just like, oh, well, Juan wants to spend time with this family. And it's like, not that he doesn't want to spend time with them, but he's also trying to build this partnership and intimate relationship with her, which they haven't really had the opportunity to do because they've never lived in the same area as one another.
And the whole situation makes me feel like when he has changes or that he wants to make and things that he wants to happen in a certain way, he wants to do things. She's just going to be like, no, that's not what you can do. That's not on the table. Right. Because being a parent is doing what I do. I am a parent. I have already made up how, and especially her completest way of being like, this is the only way to be a parent. This is what being a parent is. And anything he suggests as a change, she's going to be like, well, no, because there are, yes, certain things that you can't do if you're a parent. Like, can the kids sleep in the backyard on the grass? No, they can't. We can't do that. Right. And I'm not saying that he would suggest that, but there are definitely things that you're like, well, can't we just live in a house without kids? Not if you're a parent, you can't, right? There are certain things that go with that do come with the territory regardless. I just think she has a list that's bigger than necessary and it's going to be a struggle because he's going to want changes. He's got to want changes already.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad for him because he is not set up for happiness. He really isn't.
No, he isn't. No, not at all. Not at all. All right. So speaking of other people that have to share houses, we got a new couple. and that is
God, yeah.
Gregory and Joan. So we are introduced to Gregory, who is 35 from Long Island, as he's making some bread. And there's like a bad rap song playing in the background about being the bread man while he's doing this. He's talking about like slapping the bread for his clients. It's a thing.
Very weird.
Yeah. So he tells us that he's always enjoyed baking and also eating in his very stereotypically Italian family, which resulted, everything revolves around food, and it resulted in him at one point weighing 480 pounds. But, he's trying to turn things around, and he ended up losing about 200 pounds a few years ago. So he makes some money baking bread for people, but he's always kind of lacked the stick-to-itiveness to finish any projects he's had. So he doesn't
Not a good sign.
have a job. We're going to get to that. But he's got to find some way to make things work because his Ugandan fiance Joan is coming here soon. So he met Joan. I was actually impressed with the way he met Joan. It was organicended. It was a weird story. Like, he fell asleep on somebody's shoulder in an airplane, and that guy ended up they ended up chatting, becoming friends, and he visited that guy in Uganda. And when he got to Uganda, he met Joan there, like at the place he was staying. So they had a good time there. And then, he was like, I should have got that girl's number. But then she found him on social media. And then, back and forth time, visits, long distance. And that became an engagement. So, he wants to make things work. They want to have their own place. But Long Island is pretty expensive. So he's still living in his mom's house. So he says that Joan is skeptical about it and wants them to get their own place, but that realistically is at least 1 to 2 years away. So his mom, whose name's Lucille, says, we see her and she's cooking dinner, and she says she might baby him a little bit, which as soon as she said that, I was like, if that is a stereotypical Italian mom who says she babies him a little bit, this is the most spoiled guy on the planet, right? And she then, as is backed up by what she says, I just do a little bit, like I cook for him, I clean for him, I do your laundry, I do the dishes. But if I asked him to help, he wouldn't complain. So it's not that bad. So right now, as they eat, Joan is on the plane coming over here. So Lucille thinks that Greg can be naive and a little too trusting, and she is hoping that Joan isn't just taking advantage of him. But also the other thing that concerns her is she doesn't want to think about them having sex or hear them having sex or want to know that they're having sex at all. So would they consider sleeping in separate rooms? But Greg is like, no, we're not going to do that. What's the difference? We literally have to be married in 90 days, and I'm going to share a room with my wife. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So what's the difference if we just start now? So he is really worried that they're not going to get along. So the next time we see Greg, he's taking some care of some other side hustles he has, trying to fix his friend Laura's dishwasher. So he does some unlicensed plumbing work is his other way of making some money. He's not passionate about the plumbing work, but he does it, I'm assuming, under the table as a means to an end, because, again, he does not have a job. So while he's there, he and Laura start chatting. Turns out Joan is no slouch. Like, she has a college degree. She has a job running a nonprofit. And so he's like, he really doesn't think this is about coming here to get a green card or a golden ticket, because he doesn't have those things. Like, her life is probably better in Uganda than it would be in the States. So Laura asks if he's like ready for her to be here. And he's like, financially, not really, but love of my life and all. So because, as everybody, it's all on him. He's got to pay the way. She can't have a job yet. And again, he doesn't have a job. So his plan is to make this baking business into his primary source of income. So it might be a few rocky years until he can get everything under his feet business-wise. So he keeps saying things like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it about stuff. And Laura, his friend, is like, you should start thinking about the bridge before you get to it. And also the bridge is here. Yeah. You're at the bridge. So maybe grow up a little bit, because there's a lot of bridges here. So he says he tells us he's never really taken life seriously. And maybe that was a big mistake in life. Even bringing him a little bit to tears. He's wiping away some tears. And bringing Joan into his life has made him rethink all that. So he's really got to figure out how to grow up. So can somebody at, 35 years old, really figure out how to grow up in this short amount of time?
I think that, and this is part of the reason why there's this stereotype, right? It's like, if you don't have parents who are kind of forcing you to make these grown-up decisions, right? And kind of forcing you to adult, then yeah, of course the easy way is to not have to adult if you don't have to, you know? And so he's not going to instantly grow up, because even though Joan is gonna be bugging him, we already know she's gonna be bugging him to grow up, and he should, because now he's having to be out on his own and with a family, I mean, you know. But the reality is that his mom is always gonna be there. Mom is always going to be the lifeline. She's always going to be there as backup. And so he doesn't really have to do any of these things if he doesn't want to. Like, he could just call up his mom and be like, help me, do this for me, and she'll do it. And that's, I think, you're not really setting up your adult child for success in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just in an alternate life, right? I feel like he gets a lot of shit about it, but because he's single, right? I feel like in an alternate life, there's so many guys that go through life more or less being like this and never having to adult, because they just go from a mom to a wife, right? Who does all the same things that mom. Oh, she takes care of the cooking and the cleaning, and she pays the bills, and she, you know, does the dishes, and she like it's all just done for them. But at least those guys generally have a job,
right?
You know, at least feel like they're contributing by providing, whether or not that's true, whether or not they're a breadwinner or not. At least they feel like they're adulting and contributing by, you know, winning some sort of bread, not just baking it and selling it to their friends.
Right. I wonder a little bit about this, because usually this is not the typical, you know, living with a parent and your foreign fiance dynamic, right? Usually the dynamic is you're living with a parent, you're financially dependent on them, but your foreign fiance does not have kind of the means or ability to really contribute, or, you know, in a way that's going to be meaningful. Now, I get that Joan can't work when she's here,
Right.
but Joan, this is not her only option, you know, in life. She's not like in a desperate situation where she's trying to escape poverty in some way. Like he said, Joan has a better life in, is it Uganda? Like, yeah. Joan has a better life in Uganda. I think she has a better life. She thinks she had a better life. So right. He knows that this is going to be a downgrade. So it'll be interesting. I wonder if he'll be motivated to do better. Because, you know, I feel like a lot of these other people that are in the same situation as him, like kind of, you know, getting too much family support, they're usually not super motivated to move out of their house.
No,
know?
Because if he was going to be the kind of person that was bothered by, you know, being around his mom and losing privacy to his mom and the things that would bother people, that agitate people to move out, he'd have done it by now. Yeah. Right? It clearly doesn't bother him. It clearly is a situation that works well for him. And so, yeah, he's like, I don't feel like I need to move. I don't feel like I need to do that. But the other thing too is I've known other people who have done this sort of thing, but they generally, like, had an uncle that did it, right? And he lived at home. He lived with his parents till he was like 36. But then he like paid cash money for a house when he moved out because he was working the whole time and had a bunch of money saved, right? Like it was unlike Greg here. It was a plan. Right. Greg does not have a plan. Right. He'll get there when he gets there. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yes. He'll plan that bridge when he gets to it. Like, if we're waiting on the side of the river, Greg, where's the bridge? Like, Greg has some growing up to do, and hopefully his mom gives him the space where he'll do it. Yeah. I mean, that's more or less, it's nobody grows up until they have to be the one responsible for stuff. Right. It's just, that's just the way it is. You can pretend you're grown up, but you're not really grown up until it's on you. Okay. Maybe someone who's
got on the other end of adulting, we've got Mark and Mina.
Oh, geez.
So Mark is struggling to put up a baby gate as he's preparing for Mina and his daughter Maria to arrive. Mina has warned him to baby-proof the house, but he left it to the last minute. He thought it would be fun to pick them up in his small private plane since he's a pilot. We get some footage of Mina and Maria at the Boston airport. Mina says she has met many men who have given Mina everything that she could want except for a family. Mark tells us that they just received some bad news about Mina's son, Clayton, who is 9 from a previous relationship. His passport didn't arrive in time, so he has to stay with family until his passport gets processed. If it takes too long, Mina plans on going back to France, which means they will have to start the K-1 visa process all over again. Mark hasn't seen Maria, his daughter, in almost 2 years, so he's excited. Mina points out the American flags to Maria and asks where the Statue of Liberty is. She, once again, is in Boston. Mina tells us that Clayton is with her sister, but she is just destroyed. She was forced to come because her visa would expire. They have nothing to do but wait, and they don't have any control over the process. Clayton wondered if Mina loves Maria more than him, and Mina had to assure him that she loves him and they would be reunited soon. Mina is crying because she says that she's just not complete. Maria runs to Mark as he picks her up and gives Mina and Maria a hug. Mina suggests Mark should give her a massage and maybe they can work on another baby. Maria is squirming in Mark's arms as he's holding her, and they make their way to the small plane. Mina says that she doesn't want to die on her first day, but Mark wants to go home in style. Mark assures her that there's a parachute in there. Mina says after they land that, okay, that was sexy. They then make flight attendant and captain sex jokes. Mina notes that the house is big, but it also feels lonely. She wonders if she should learn to crochet when Mark travels for work. Mark shows Mina the room intended for Clayton, and she notes that there's a family picture hung up on the wall that includes his ex-wife. Mina is starting to see more and more pictures of his ex, and she thinks that it's disrespectful, and he should have taken them down. Mark admits that his house is kind of like a bachelor pad. Mina says it's fine, but it's just too simple, and she would rather move to the city. Mark shows her their room and the closet, and she says it's big enough, but only for her shoes. By the way, he has a very large walk-in closet. Mm-hmm. He calls the shower vintage, and Mina says that, okay, no problem, we're going to change it all. She tells us that she will need to change practically everything. Mina is worried that New Hampshire is just full of old people and is worried about other kids for Maria and her son. She suggests that they move, and Mark wanted her to be open to the whole house and area and give it a try. Mina says that he doesn't understand her, and she'll just give it 6 months. Mark tells her that he doesn't mean give it 6 months and leave. He means to truly try for 6 months. She said she would rather leave tomorrow without regrets. Mina says that she's the boss in the house. Okay, so I had mixed feelings about Mina. On the one hand, I really appreciated that she seemed really torn up about her son, and her son was a priority, where she was like, okay, this visa is going to expire, but I will give up this visa if I can't see him within 90 days. So it sounds like as much as she can, she is prioritizing her son over her relationship-ish. On the other hand, my God, this woman seems like very high maintenance.
Yeah.
And entitled and demanding. So what was your kind of take on her?
Yeah, we definitely had the back and forth of that, like we feeling for her with this situation with her son. And then she gets there and is just like, no. Like, no, this sucks. We have to leave. Like, this isn't this house that is definitely larger than average.
Oh,
it's a nice house. They flew to that house in a $700,000-$800,000 plane.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a cheap, destitute place. Mm-hmm. This is a nice neighborhood. Yeah. This is a nice place that she's at. And was it decorated by an old man who's a bachelor? Yeah, it was. It was decorated by an old man who's a bachelor. Like, those are all fixable things. But it also reminds me of people who walk into a house and they go, oh, these walls are ugly. These are hideous. I hate this color. Let's go to another house. And be like, did you?
Yeah, potential. Come on.
Yeah, think another step, but she doesn't want to think. She just wants everything to be, she seemed like she just wanted everything to be perfect right away. She completely rejected New Hampshire as a boring place, not worth her time, without even going anywhere.
Right.
The only thing she's seen in New Hampshire is the inside of this house.
Right.
Right.
I mean, she literally flew into the house, so it's not like she drove through it or anything.
Yeah, so she's seen nothing of New Hampshire at all besides, again, the inside of a house, right? And Boston's airport. And I guess when she says the city, does she mean Boston? Or does she mean New York? Or is she going to be like, unless I'm living in a penthouse that overlooks Central Park, I'm going to be disappointed with my life, with where I live. Like, so I don't know exactly what she's looking for, but she came across, you're right, as incredibly entitled and incredibly petty, mean to him about how dare you have this, not having things that are good enough for me. I told you I wanted better than this. How dare you? And he was right when she was like 6 months. She meant, yeah, you have 6 months to fix it. You have 6 months to give me something better. Not, I'm going to try this for 6 months. Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, based on this one episode, everything that the daughter had kind of said Mina had done, in terms of being standoffish with the family, not putting any effort, completely believable.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and but also how much effort did he actually put in, right? Things and if she would have been more upset about I thought you baby-proofed the house. Why are all these cabinets? Where's all the baby stuff? What the hell, man? That one, if she did that, I'd have much more sympathy. But instead of just being what? This isn't enough room for my shoes. It's just oh God.
Meanwhile, you see them leaving Maria in the background, just toddling about as they're
right.
I was you probably shouldn't leave this kid by themselves.
Yes, just wandering around in this unbaby-proofed home that you have. Right.
So we didn't see our throuple this week, which from all accounts, I think people are kind of stoked on it. At least that's what people on Reddit seems like popular opinion on Reddit right now.
They are happy that they're not there or what?
Yeah, because most people are since when did this become Seeking Sister Wives? Because this is a very similar storyline to basically Seeking Sister Wives. So, it does seem like, what show is this? So, but anyways, we didn't see them this week. So out of the group you saw this week, who would you say is your student of the week?
My student of the week, I said Maddie. Mm-hmm. Just because he seemed... weirdly, his seriousness seemed down to earth to me.
It did.
He had no pretensions about what was going on. He really was just trying to take things in. He was so calm. In that seriousness, that calmness is something that the show generally doesn't shoot for. They shoot for big personalities, and he isn't that. No. And so I liked him so far.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that, because and maybe it has to do with the seriousness of how reversible is this decision, but it seems like he has made his decision, and this isn't so many partners that we've seen, or on either side, who think that this is them really testing their relationship before they actually get married. Yeah. I actually went with Juan. I feel like he was thrown a lot.
Yeah, he was thrown a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was thrown a lot. He said he wasn't feeling overwhelmed quite yet. So I felt like he handled it as best as he could. And I have a lot of sympathy for Juan's situation right now. Yeah. What about your dunce?
So my dunce was Mina. Just that entitled, complaining, anytime, no matter who it is, just complaining right off the bat is a bad look, right? That's that's going to make you seem entitled no matter what you're complaining about. But complaining about the superficial stuff of the house, your house that you spent your life saving up for and buying isn't good enough for me.
Yeah.
We need to change this right away. It's infuriating.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said, but I actually went with Greg just for not having a life lesson. And, and it's one thing to live your life that way, but once you start kind of collecting dependents, that's when I have a problem, because now you're bringing other people down, right? And as much as Joan is probably an independent woman, the fact that she's coming here on a K-1 visa by default makes her a dependent. So he is gaining a dependent, and that's not fair to either one of them if he does not have a plan and he is not thinking about the future.
Sure.
Or I shouldn't even say thinking about the future, acting for the future.
Yeah, like moving toward it, actually doing something for the future.
Yeah. All right, what about your life lesson?
So just because you have kids, this goes to, what's her face, Jessica, doesn't mean you can't have a door.
I know,
those
right?
aren't things that are mutually, you can't have both of these things. In fact, this is the real part of the life lesson. Kids are supposed to have doors.
Yeah.
It's safer for kids to sleep in a bedroom with the door closed.
Yeah.
And that's what obviously that can't work for everybody, but yeah, they should have their own door, and you should have your door, and they should be closed, and they're not locked, but and it's a fire safety thing. It's makes for better, but it is actually safer, and you're supposed to let your kids have a door that is closed.
Okay, great. I didn't even think about the fire safety of that. Yeah. Okay, so my life lesson isn't really original because I'm basically just kind of summarizing Mark's, request is if you say that you're going to give time to be open to something, to actually be open and not just think of it as some kind of weird prison sentence that you have to endure before things will change. Right? Because that is not Mina's attitude right now. She's just like, okay, I can survive this for 6 months before we move. And Mark brought up a very good point because he could see right through her. It's like she actually has to be open and give it a real honest chance, which means it might be longer than 6 months.
Right. Which also means, but that also means that he should allow her, and I don't think he won't. She should be able to make the space her own.
Yes.
Right.
No, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Okay, well, we will be back next week with this group. I think we have, Shekinah and Sarper. It's kind of weird that they're not in the U.S. yet, but
yeah,
hopefully...
we have our throuple, who may or even may not get somebody in the U.S. There's no visa yet, right?
We don't even know what's happening.
That's not how it's supposed to work at all. Even adding on top of Seeking Sister Wives thing, they're supposed to have a K-1 visa already.
Yeah. But hopefully we'll see some more reunions soon. So until then.
See everybody then.
Okay, bye.
Bye.